What's going on, brother?
Not too much, man. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. So we're gonna get into this video of this controversial situation that happened yesterday between Will Smith and Chris Rock. So what were you thinking as you were watching it?
I have to say it was shocking and not shocking at the same time. Like I saw something that was definitely extremely alarming happen. Like you just don't expect something like that to be the reaction of somebody, of that status or at that level. You would think that even something said jokingly, something that might have been brushed off so many times before, like jokes at that level, or with other people, you would never really expect there to be physicality involved. However, at the same time, comedians always skate a fine line where you never know. You're always taking that risk of saying something that might offend somebody, might go too far. But then again, as we've seen so many times, it doesn't always end with somebody having a physical reaction to it. It's usually some verbal exchange of words, and that's about as far as it goes. So that was very striking to me to see Will get up out of his chair after making eye contact with his wife and being like, okay, we're not good. Like, this is a problem. But it was interesting to watch the calmness of his demeanor in his approach. He was very calm. He walked up super calm. It almost walked up like he might have whispered something in his ear to tell him like, yo, that wasn't cool. Or maybe he's going to take the mic and say something like you didn't know what to expect. Yeah. But as soon as I saw his shoulder move back, I was like, oh no.
That all happened so fast. I don't even think Chris or anyone in the audience was expecting that exact thing.
No, not even close.
I was telling you yesterday, this is more of a Kanye West type of thing that happened than a Will Smith.
It's so true. It's so true. It seems out of context and out of character for him. Like we've seen him in so many different roles professionally. We've seen him invite us into his personal life as of recent, the last many years, to kind of show us his journey, through healing and speaking more to advocating for mental health and really building and repairing bonds and families, things of that nature. So to see the calmness of that, I guess, makes you forget that there's a hurting person inside, makes you forget there's somebody who might be angry, somebody who might come from different life experiences from their past that have been like just under the surface the whole time.
I'm glad you said that exact thing, because I know that a lot of people have said Will Smith is rich. So why would anything like that affect him as a rich, successful Black man? Why couldn't he just sit down and let it go?
And I think oftentimes that is what is expected. We've created a society that has socialized Black men to be expected to do one of two things. If you are going to be successful, if you're going to be a professional, you're expected to do as you're told and to be calm and to take the high road, and to always like relax and settle down and be professional, lest there be severe consequences that often come with the other side of the equation, which are Black men who, might be more reactive, who might not have been socialized and raised in a way where they have the social skills to navigate their world outside of using physical violence, and the shuffling back and forth for respect and dominance, and it's interesting to see a man of that kind of success be faced with, the common average Black guy's problem or circumstance, and even at that level, knowing that you're not impenetrable, from dealing with the, deep polarizing emotions that come with a situation like that: embarrassment, anger, frustration. There's so much just disrespect, and how do we define disrespect? How do you look at that? What does that mean for you or for me or for him? And is it different for Black men versus white men, or for Black women or white women? Like, is it different culturally as well? Like how we even go about defining and looking at respect, and then what are the expectations of how you should react based on that?
So have you ever been in that situation yourself as an African American male where you have been in an environment where you didn't feel safe or comfortable expressing your emotions about something that bothered you, about something that hurt you over a long course of time, and then been in a situation where you felt like you were just out of control from a whole buildup?
Absolutely. I've been in both of those situations. Most recently, like I would say on like a professional end of things, I've had to step away from job positions, twice memorably. Yeah, because it's one of those things, dude. Like you have such a clear understanding that my life experiences growing up were very different than a lot of the experiences of people around me and people in the work environment. So in a professional environment, you're expected to conduct yourself professionally. And like if people are disrespectful to you, or if people, make you feel unseen, unheard, or you're looking at the imbalance of treatment and or consequences for behavior that's unprofessional or inappropriate, and you're just like, wow, this is like striking how different my white counterpart is treated versus my Black counterpart and how they're treated. And it's like, if I then go into a situation similar to like what Will was dealing with, which let's just categorize that as disrespect, that the outcome based on my choices are going to be different for me than it is necessarily for another peer of mine. And it's really, really tough and frustrating, I think, when you hit a point of having to face seeing disrespect take place many, many times, and somebody get away with it time and time again. Then somebody get really upset and have this blowout about being disrespected, and then there's no consequences given for the person being disrespectful or for the individual who is being disrespected, that now has exploded and has had an episode where they just have had enough, and then they were unprofessional, they were disrespectful, they were out of line, and saying and doing things that aren't appropriate for a work environment. That's frustrating, and it's even more frustrating to know that if you are in that situation, which I have been, and then you react in that situation, that how you react now will be viewed differently, literally just based on the fact that you're a Black male.
I
And
have,
like,
yeah,
that's hard.
I have definitely been where you're talking about as well, in work environments where I've gotten little digs, I've gotten things that were said that were inappropriate. And, based on my upbringing and based on what I was told to do, I just kept the emotions inside and I didn't say anything. And then another thing happened, I didn't say anything. The energy has to go somewhere. So I'm keeping this energy, even though they're not feeling anything towards what they're saying, the disrespect, as you put it. And then one time, the disrespect gets a little bit too much in combination, which is, I feel, what happened here. I feel like that slap situation was not just because of that one comment about his wife. The way that he went up there was like, I'm letting out all this energy. I'm releasing all this energy that I've been receiving over this number of years with people online. Yeah, people online just talking about me, and comedians making our family the butt of all the jokes. I have to put this energy somewhere, and you're the guy. You're the guy today. So, exactly. But the interesting thing about what you said too is that for him, his stature, his status, his money, all of those things make his consequences that he's going to face less severe. I mean, to the world, they're talking about things like him potentially not going to be at the Oscar Awards anymore. And for us, like if you and me are sitting in that same audience and we get up and slap Chris Rock, that's not going to be the same outcome for us.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think it's interesting to like really note that consequences are not the same for everybody. And the delivery of punishment in this country, we've seen that it is very subjective. based on rules and laws put in place that should be objective. And that is something that when you start looking at what's fair, what is just, what is right, where the line of integrity is actually held, it's like it's not held. It becomes a laughing joke of understanding that it's like presentation of information and who presents the best based on the resources that they have to do so. So like a Will Smith in that situation has extremely good resources to present in an argument in such a way that like who knows what they could say. I was under all this emotional pressure and dealing with the stress of XYZ. I had a mental break and an outburst. And like now it's just like literally dismissed as not a big deal, misdemeanor, slap on the wrist, or there's like Chris Rock didn't file charges. So there's no charges filed, so the state would want to have to specifically go after him after seeing that outside of Chris Rock wanting to press charges and pursue it personally. Not going to happen at that status. He's Will Smith, but for your average person, like if I went and slapped Chris Rock, like everything would have stopped, it would have been a completely different situation. So, there is something to be said for that.
A fun question that I want to ask, just piggybacking off of that. If you were Chris Rock in that situation, standing there and hosting, and Will Smith approaches you and slaps you, what would your reaction be to that?
That is a shotgun question. and the thing is, it is hard because I have to look at it in two different ways. I believe in my heart the right thing to do would be to understand where he's coming from and to look at his pain and his hurt and the potential like dysfunction that you could like see in his family's life that's public, and you could be really empathetic and say like, this is a broken man, he's dealt with a lot of loss, over the last few years. And you're watching his family being like just dragged across every social media outlet for various things, various reasons. That's hard. That has to be hard on anybody. So I could understand somebody being at their wit's end, but you also just got smacked in the face by a grown man.
Yeah.
So like the other part of you definitely is reactive in that moment. And the question is like, do you have the ability to think quickly on your feet and assess all of that information and like give him the consideration of the fact that like this is a guy going through a lot and I'm just going to eat this one and deal with it later and maybe reach out to him or hope to resolve this a different way. I don't know. There's also the fact that, this is a world stage and you have two Black men representing Black culture in an inadvertent way, but still kind of direct, where the choices you make and your decisions in that moment will affect people's view of Black culture and Black individuals in their life, based on your choices. And like the pressure to choose the right thing in those moments when it's the greatest weighing on you is tough. I don't know that I would make the right choice, in that situation. I know I would look at a man disrespecting me and wanting to have a physical altercation, and but I would have to understand as Chris, like I open my mouth, and I set myself up for the potential of that. And like just to segue, side note real fast, like I think we live in a society where people do not deal with consequences. You really have these social media, like internet gangsters behind a keyboard, or you'll like be in a remote work situation and have people like text you things, somebody can message you, they could Slack you, whatever platform you're using. And it's like, you get real crafty about whatever you're saying and you feel really emboldened behind your keyboard. But it's like, you forget not everybody plays by the same rules you do, and it's like some people have a willingness you could not even fathom in the way that you were raised or born or in the entirety of your existence and your experiences. You would never think to like go outside of your rule book that might serve up consequences that you're not prepared to deal with. But then you live a life assuming like others also live by your rule book. And I think there's such naivety that goes with that, assuming people will not willingly face consequences to like take action that they see fitting for the situation. And it's like, I think Will did consider the consequences when he walked up on stage, and he was willing to deal with whatever happened next, you know, and didn't care. Chris could have reacted. He was willing to deal with that. Chris doesn't react. He's willing to deal with that. Doesn't get invited to the Oscars again. He's also willing to deal with that. If his career ended in that moment, in terms of nobody wanted to work with him anymore, I think he considered all of that in that like 50-meter walk from his seat to Chris.
There's a couple of, that's so true. And there's like a couple of things that I'm thinking based upon that. Mm-hmm. One thing that they accept about us as Black people is the things that we do for society in terms of entertainment, music, sports, comedy. Like this has been from the beginning of time, the beginning of America, let's say, because you see how entertainers were always allowed in the building. The comedians were always there. The musicians were always there. If you were the talent, you could be in these all white environments, such as the Oscars, which is still very much a white environment. And I feel like the standard that you were talking about, the pressure of being the whole representation for our whole culture, you have to come in there and you got to wear your fancy suit and you got to put on your bow tie and you've got to act exceptional. You can't act like a Black man in that setting. So in the case of Chris Rock and his comedy routines, something that I personally thought of was the fact that Will Smith and Jada are like low-hanging fruit when it comes to things that you can talk about in your comedy set. And it's like, I know the world is going to enjoy me going at her for her hair. Not that I think that it was malicious. I don't think that he knew of her condition or intentionally did that because of her condition. But it was like, this is a low-hanging fruit that the people watching me and sponsoring me and the people that asked me to be here are going to enjoy. So I feel like there was another layer where Will Smith was like, you of all people are the one who is going to do this to me. Like, I'm looking at somebody who should be on my side, and you are continuously tearing me down at this show, at the last one that you were at, in between in your comedy sets. And it feels more personal in nature because of that. So it was like, I'm giving you this slap, whether right or wrong. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm not condoning that, but I'm just saying I can kind of understand the psyche.
Absolutely. I grew up in a time that was very different than what exists now. I grew up in a neighborhood that's very different than what exists now. This whole idea that you could like say and do whatever you want and have like the security of your physical body, and you're so bold in what you think you could say out of your mouth or write in text and feel safe. Literally, you just get to always feel safe. That idea of physical safety always, no matter what you do, is wild to me. Like, I just don't understand how people conduct themselves feeling you could say or do like whatever you want. And only if it reaches extremes where like the police get involved or something, then it's like a big deal then. But I was like, yo, I lived in a time where you would get, I mean, getting slapped is so condescending. It is so demeaning and belittling because the man has an energy to ball up a fist and throw, you know, punches at you. But instead of that, I'm going to literally just smack you down to the ground. Like, he did a full right to left cross body, you know, slap on this man. And it was just so disrespectful, you know, and it's like, you're not even man enough for me to have to punch you. I'm going to slap you in the mouth and walk away. It's the height culturally for me. That's the height of disrespect, you know, slapping somebody, spitting on somebody, you know, things like that, man. Like, those are just big no items. And I grew up in a time where, oh, absolutely, the idea of blood being shed over something like that and a fight breaking out was like a given. Like, you just assumed that was the next step that was about to take place when people, you know, would talk loose at the mouth like that. And to grow up in a time now where there's such protections in place, for the physically weak, mentally, emotionally weak, but the first that have an opinion, the first that, will throw a jab at you only because you feel protected. But it's interesting. This is another situation of you're protected if we all play by the same rules.
Yeah.
And it was a great example for me of somebody that hit a point where there was a bold willingness to step outside of the rule book that you assumed we were playing by, and then you got slapped in the mouth publicly in front of the same way you said something publicly, you got slapped in your mouth publicly in front of everybody. And it's like, I'm willing to deal with what happens next. And like, I grew up on that principle. But the interesting thing is that it kept a checks and balances, where you thought before you spoke. You were thoughtful about your actions. You were thoughtful about your words. You weren't quick to just shoot off at the mouth and just say whatever was on your mind, because maybe you should be really considerate about all the factors involved before you speak, unless if you were just a warrior, and you were willing to constantly be in physical altercation, but that comes with very serious risks, that most aren't willing to face or deal with. And it's just interesting to see it on that stage, at that scale, of life, to see two men that are at the height of their careers, like retiring out of their careers at this point, passing the torch on, to come down to physical blows, in a situation like that.
What's so interesting is that I feel that this era and the disconnected nature, we're connected in a widespread scale in terms of you can hop on the phone and I could go on Facebook, I could send text messages, I could reach people instantly. But the thing is, I'm not seeing them. They're not in my actual presence. So a big thing that you said is respect. I feel like there's less respect required to sit here and type something out here. I'm gonna punch you in the face. You suck. You're ugly. I hate how you look. Your family, whatever. And I'm typing it out versus looking somebody in the face, eye to eye, and telling them that. So a lot of people grew up in this era where a lot of those interactions that they have with people are online, are on the computer, are on the phone, and they say anything.
Yeah.
And I think that for people who grew up in the era you're talking about, like our era, and even before in Will and Chris Rock's era, they're both kind of the same era. It was probably a hard transition getting into this era where people are allowed to say anything to you and you're not supposed to respond. You can't respond.
That has to come with consequences. There's no way that we're emotionally built to compress that much intense feeling and do nothing. And then somebody's like, you should read a book or listen to some music or like draw some pretty pictures. Like, I am at a place where this needs to vent out of me. And it doesn't mean that you need to like go get into a fight. It doesn't mean that like the physicality needs to be something that's negative, but especially for men, I think is different for men than women in this way, where we typically need to exert our emotion and our negative emotions and work through things physically. That's something, especially like I know black males relate to this heavily, at least my generation, our generation, growing up, and generation before us, where oftentimes I'd be in the gym, that's on the basketball court, that's playing football, it's working out, it's boxing, it had to be emitted in some kind of physicality, and the feelings I feel of those intense emotions when you're in a position like that are not just like emotional and like mental in your head. It's literally a physical feeling, like your body is buzzing and like you feel you need to do something. You don't know what, pick up a rock. I don't know, like cut wood. I need to do something to purge this intensity that's like just raging inside of me. Yeah. And I feel when you don't have positive outlets to deal with that, or you're at the limit of being able to vent through positive outlets because you're in a situation where it's like disrespectful, that changes things. And I think that's where situations like this go sideways, and you see extremes being reached.
Exactly. And I feel like also in the celebrity world, outlets are so different than what it would be for me and you. Like we can do things off the grid. Like I need to gather myself. I can just meditate. I can go to the gym and be unbothered. There's so many things I can do. With them, they're in their bubble. Their bubble is their home. And they can do a lot of things that we do outside of the home in the home. But sometimes being in the home all the time is not the space that you need. But then it's like, as soon as you step outside, there's the cameras, there's the paparazzi. If you decide to just put something about how you're feeling raw and unfiltered on your social media, millions of comments. Everybody has their opinion on it. And I feel like there's no way that does not have an impact on your mental health. And I want to throw out this notion that if you are rich, it means that you don't have the same set of intangibles that we all have. Like, because you're rich, if somebody smacks you in the face, well, I have all this money, so being smacked in the face is not going to make me feel anything. No, it doesn't matter how much money you have. You are hosting a show, millions of people are watching, it's live, and somebody smacked you in the face and walk back to their seat. You're going to feel angry. You're going to feel hurt. You're going to feel confused. You're going to feel everything that I would feel. In addition, you might feel an extra layer because you're Chris Rock. You're like, if I swing and punch this guy in the face as a response, and this whole gala gets shut down because there's some big brawl in this building, I'm Chris Rock, the representation for the Black man that's allowed at the table. Look at all the people that I'm going to let down, an entire community, because I am the acceptable one.
Heavy burden.
Yeah.
And I think Will expressed that in so many words in his responses following that, where he felt the weight of like disappointment. I think more than anything, that he allowed himself to get to that place. But then that's the other thing to consider. Everyone has limits. Like, you don't know what that is for the person who you're interacting with. You have no idea what that person just went through. Like, he could have went through a situation that same day prior to showing up. It could have been like on the car ride over, something intense happened, or he got some news, could have gotten into a fight with Jada. Like, you have no idea the circumstances that led up to that moment, and you just happened to catch the wrong one at the wrong time. So it could be like seemingly random, where like truly a lot of circumstances led up to that moment where he reacted that way. But big picture in life, I give grace to people in the sense that we're humans. Like, nobody's perfect. We all go through stuff. And all of these things are learning lessons. Like, I think all things, when you're on a journey trying to get better, trying to heal from like the things you've been through, and you are trying to mend and fix relationships and evolve and elevate yourself. You're not perfect. The process of that's not perfect. It doesn't always look pretty. And I feel that he's somebody who's trying. He's genuinely trying. And that is a mistake just like anybody could have made. It's just that it's on a bigger stage in front of more people, to really critique and scrutinize it. And like, everybody has an opinion, and there's probably like 100,000 memes that were made in the last 24 hours, and it's like, you also have to live with seeing and hearing all of that. You're badgered constantly. Like, you can't turn on an electronic device without him seeing himself, and like, that's tough. Like, I opened up YouTube today. First thing to pop up that was suggested was that, and it's incredible. Like, as him living his own life, he can't even open up the news. You can't open up any form of social media. You've come down to your phone being used just as a phone and for text message, and people are probably calling and blowing you up about it. You turn on your computer, you can't open up a web browser. That's probably the first thing that's going to pop up. Hopefully you're just writing in Microsoft Word. It's like your life now has been invasively, penetrated by all of these outside forces that you've welcomed in based on your career choice and your path, but that's an immense amount of pressure that I think there needs to be an understanding that money does not solve those problems. Money amplifies those problems. Money is a great amplifier of like who you really are, and your character and the problems that you have. If you have money problems, you have more money, you're going to have bigger money problems. You have relationship problems, you have more money, you're going to have more relationship problems. It just amplifies what already exists. And I think like that's something we've always seen consistent, and we see it consistent with him. He's no different. I give him grace, man, for those moments. But is it right to hit somebody? I mean, ultimately, you need to be willing to deal with the consequences. That's what it is. There's a time and a place for everything, including getting hit and hitting. Like there's a way for there to be a time and a place for everything. Was that the right time or place for that? Probably not, but was it for him on his life journey? Probably. There's a lot of lessons he's going to have to learn. Chris is going to learn. The world is going to learn through what just happened in that moment. And ultimately, it's like no one died. It wasn't fatal. It wasn't final. It was flawed. And like from our flaws, we learn and we grow. And I think that opportunity will probably have more positive and good come from it for everyone. Outside of looking at the social media culture and the memes and the nonsense, at a deeper level than that, I think we'll see more growth come from that moment and elevation come from that than anything else.
And I think that's a great way to close off. I know we're going to have a lot more different discussions going on. So thanks for dropping by and dropping some knowledge here.
Definitely, man. This has been awesome. Thank you.
All right.